Number 16, today, Mishnah. So as I said just yesterday, the shleimus of Torah is the combination Torah shebechsav and Torah shebal peh. There's a very famous statement of Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon, which everybody quotes, but most people mistakenly quote. Ein umma seinu umma ela b'terosa. Our nation is not a nation only with its Torah. But what Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon actually wrote is one additional letter. Ein umma seinu umma ela b'teroseha. Not b'terosa in a singular tense, but in plural. Ela b'teroseha. And I am thoroughly convinced what he means is what sets us apart is the combination of Torah shebechsav and Torah shebal peh. Others also believe in the Bible. We are unique because of Torah shebal peh. Like koras HaKadosh Baruch Hu brisa miYisrael, elo bishvil dvorim shebal peh shenemar, korati imcho bris ve'es Yisrael. That is a Gemara in Gittin Daf Samach. But Torah shebal peh is also based on two foundations, and that is the Mishnah and the Talmud. And we spoke about this yesterday. What is the difference between Mishnah and Talmud? Different eras, different sages, different form. The relationship between the Tanoim and the Ameroim. Chachmei HaMishnah are defined as the Tanaim. Chachmei HaGemara defined as the Amoraim. And there's the Amoraic period. The greatest Ameroim spoke with unbelievable respect, admiration about their predecessors, about the Tanoim. Rabbi Yochanan was the very first generation of Ameroim. He was the leader of all of the Babylonian, the Yerushalmi Ameroim. And Rabbi Yochanan says in Erev and Daf Nun Gimel, Liben shel Rishonim, kepischoi shel Ulam, Liben shel Achroinim, kepischoi shel Heichal. And the Gemara in Erev explains, who are those Rishonim? Rabbi Kiva, his disciple Rabbi Loza ben Shemua. Reb Zera Mesechet Shabbos Daf Kuf Yud Beis says, Im Rishonim k'malochim, anu kivnei Yadam. Im Rishonim kivnei Yadam, anu kichamayrim. Reb Zera was one of the greatest Ameroim, and he quotes Rava ben Zimuna. The distance between the Tanoim and we is like the distance between angels and mortals, or maybe the difference between human beings and animals. So even the greatest Ameroim exalted their predecessors, Chachmei HaMishnah. I wrote a very lengthy kuntras called Im Rishonim Kemalachim. And in this kuntras I dealt with the fundamental question of Yeridas Adairis. The Kesef Mishnah Perik Beis of Hilchas Mamrem asks the question, why cannot Ameroim disagree with Tanoim? The same fundamental question is, do we find Rishonim that dispute the Talmud? No. Most of the Achronim would never dare to disagree with the Rishonim. This is a cornerstone and a very fundamental principle in the Mesilas of Halacha. When it comes to Chachmei Yumis Olam, every generation thinks we are smarter and brighter than those that came before us. It's not the same in Torah. The entire halachic process is just trying to interpret what the previous generations said or what they would say. But a closer analysis, even of Chachmei Umis, will make us realize we know far more than they knew, but we lack their huge intellect. Isaac Newton was one of the greatest minds 300 years ago. And the world tells a story. Isaac Newton was confronted. How do you dare to disagree with Archimedes the Greek? And he responded by saying, Archimedes was a giant. I am a dwarf. I'm a midget. But I'm a midget that had the privilege of standing on the shoulders of giants. And that is why I might have seen farther than Archimedes. I was standing on his shoulders. 400 years before Isaac Newton, we find this very same mashal in Shalosh Teshuvos Harid, Siman Samech Beis, Rabbeinu Yeshayahu Harishon was one of the great Ashkenazi Rishonim. And then we find this mashal in Shaboli Aleket, in his introduction, and he quotes the Teshuvos Harid. The Megillas Esther, one of the great commentators of Sefer Mitzvos Rambam, 200 years later, quotes this again. So obviously, Gedolei Yisrael were very fond of this mashal. And the Tosfos Rid writes, Shomati me philosophem nochrim, non-Jewish philosophers. So obviously this thought, this idea goes way back before Sir Isaac Newton. That is a fundamental principle in halacha. The foundation of Torah Shebaal Peh is the Mishnah. And the Gemara never disputes what we find in the Mishnah. The Gemara is analysis, elaboration, argumentation. So the difference between Mishnah and Gemara, the Mishnah is not as complicated as the Gemara. The Mishnah almost never has argumentation. Sometimes it does have very fundamental argumentation, but that is rare. The Mishnah is a compilation of halachic principles and statements. The Gemara is the analysis. So Mishnah and Gemara are two sides of the same coin, but the Mishnah is the fundament, the very basis of Torah Shebaal Peh. And whatever comes after the Mishnah is commentary. Between the Mishnah and the Gemara, we have the Tosefta, Safra, Safri. Safra is also called Toras Kohanim. Those are all based on the Mishnah. And the Mishnah was combined by Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Rabbeinu HaKadosh brought together an assembly of most of the great sages of his era, and together they compiled the Mishnayos. The breakdown is Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Zroan, Moed, Noshim, Nezikin, Kodshim, Taharis. Those are the 6 areas which cover the entire spectrum of Torah Shebaal Peh. So Mikra and Mishnah are two sides of the same coin, and both are essential in our quest of achieving Kabbalah Torah and Kisra Shel Torah. Ve'idech Pirusha Zil Gemara.